What is up, guys? Welcome back to Double F Outdoors. Guys, super excited you guys have joined us today. Super exciting video for you guys. If you guys watched one of my last videos talking about my 5 favorite summer fishing lures, I told you guys this video is gonna be coming out, but today is all about jigs. A jig fishing how-to, what I look for, what I like to do. I'm gonna talk real quick up here at the house with some of my setups and my favorite go-to jigs and things like that. And then we're gonna hit the water and I'm gonna show you guys some tips and tricks that I like. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Like I said, jigs how-to today. Today, we're not gonna focus on every kind of jig, just specifically flipping casting jigs, okay? We may do a video over jigs in general later, but today specifically a pitching jig. Pitching and flipping a jig for summertime bass. So the first thing I'm gonna get into is if you go to the tackle store, everybody makes a jig anymore, it seems like. There's jigs galore out there. It can be overwhelming at times, and if you look at these shelves, there's like 31,000 different color options. I heard Gerald Swindell talk about this, and this is something I've really started doing in the last year or two that's helpful, because I fell for that. I would sit there and like try to figure out what colors do they like, will they eat this color, when would I use this color, what jig trailer to pair it with, and that's gonna bring me my 2 first points. First thing is first, for jig fishing, the simpler the better. And what I mean by that is all those colors are fine. But what I've learned from jig fishing is you can get them really to bite 2 colors. A dark, like a green pumpkin, or a black. Now, you're gonna have your blacks and blues, like I've got blacks and blues. Another favorite color for me for dirty water is PB&J. I'll show you what one of those looks like here in a second. But other than that, you guys are gonna see here when I show you, most of my jigs are dark. They're green pumpkin, they're natural colors. Maybe they've got a hint of another color thrown in. I've got one jig in this box that's black and purple. I use some blacks, but mainly most of my jigs are green pumpkin with something else. And the other point that I brought up about simplifying it is your trailer does not always have to completely match what you're throwing. You know, I like to match the hatch, but the great thing about throwing jigs that are primarily green pumpkin or just throwing a green pumpkin jig is you can kind of pair any trailer to it. Gerald Swindell, I'm a huge fan of his. He fishes with jigs a lot, and he said something a few years ago on a Bass U lecture that really caught my attention. He said, you know, they're fish, they're not rocket scientists. And what I mean by that is they're not down there studying what color the trailer is and whether it matches or not. You know, a lot of times I like throwing a green pumpkin jig and then I try to match the hatch with the trailer. And that's just kind of my go-to. But the simpler the better. And I'm gonna show you guys this box right here. So as you guys can see here, I hope you guys can see, like this is a PB&J, you know, I like that for dirty water, but the rest of these are dark. Like I said, you have your blacks and blues, but dark colors, you know, green pumpkins with some life in it. This is like a bluegill color, but it's primarily a green pumpkin. Here, I think this is called rotting pumpkin, but it's a green pumpkin base. Here's a straight up green pumpkin jig right here. I really go to, like, here's a jig, it's green pumpkin, but it's got like 3 or 4 strands of blue in it. I mean, I really stick with these colors, and then I love to go different trailer colors is kind of what I target in on. And most of the jigs I flip going, you know, from that to size are about 1/2 ounce. I love the 1/2 ounce jigs. I just feel like it's a perfect. I'll go to a 3/4 sometimes. I throw a 3/4 in a football jig a lot. We're not talking about football jigs today, but I just like to go a little heavier with a football jig. But for flipping jigs, 1/2 ounce is normally where I like to sit at. Sometimes if I'm flipping really heavy cover, something I'll go up to a 3/4. But you know, normally if I'm fishing like heavy, thick stuff, I normally go to a punching setup instead of a jig. That's just my personal preference, but normally 1/2 ounce, I think it's a perfect size. You get hung up, something about jig fishing, you're gonna get hung up a lot, but that's where the fish are. You're gonna be throwing it in cover and grass, trees, rocks, all sorts of stuff. And just be prepared for that. You might have to go out and get a jig, but definitely effective style. All right, guys, just real quick before we hit the waters, a couple of my go-to styles of jigs. Something about me, I am a jig connoisseur. I love flipping a jig. Where I live here in Illinois, a jig is one of my primary always tied on baits. It's always tied on. I flip it a lot in the summer, especially when it's hot around cover. That's just kind of the ponds and lakes I fish in is really a popular and effective bait. So I have always been a big jig fan. I've used almost every brand of jigs. I've used Booyah jigs, Strike King. I've got a couple colors that I really like specifically of Strike King. Recently, I've started transitioning to building some of my own jigs on the boat, not to sell, just kind of my preference on the water. But there are still some jigs, and that's something, I don't necessarily claim that I use one style of jig because I think every jig's kind of got its own special place. But there's a couple jigs I really want to show you real quick. 3. This right here, this is the Googan Juicy Jig. This is one of their flipping and casting jigs. Nice skirt. I really like this jig. It's a good jig. It's probably on this list. It's my third one on the list. I like it. It's not a bad jig. It's actually, you'll see here in a second, Googan makes another jig that I like more. Very nice jig. It's got the stand-up motion. It's got a really cool action. This is right here. This is Okeechobee Craw. So as you can see, very green pumpkin-y, very, you know, dark color with some blue thrown in. I've got some green pumpkin ones in here. Another color I like to use, this is a football jig. You guys will be able to see the color at least. This right here, this is rotted pumpkin. This is in their football jig. I throw this in their other jigs. Once again, very dark color, some orange thrown in there. I really like this color. It's a good color. That's the football jig. Like I said, we'll talk about that another day, but I do throw that jig. But green pumpkin, that Okeechobee Craw is one of my favorite go-tos as well. Going on to the second jig on this list. This is the Fin Commander flipping jig. I'll link all these baits below so you guys can check them out. This is peas and carrots is the color, is what they call it. And as you guys can see, just like that rotted pumpkin color, you know, very dark green pumpkin weed guard, no green pumpkin head, and then some orange thrown in there. And then we're gonna talk about trailers here in a second real quick, but I'm really falling in love with this jig. I started throwing this jig this year. I really like the head on it. I like the very, you know, pointed head. I love that for a flipping jig. It lets it get through some light grass. Like I said, if it's like real thick grass, I'm normally upgrading like a punching setup of some kind. But this jig is slowly just been climbing the list of my favorite jigs to throw. It's a great jig. But now my favorite jig to throw, I talked about it, that Googan, the juicy jig I really like. But the reason why it's not number one is I throw this one a lot more. This is the Googan Thicc jig. And you guys are gonna see, once again, a different head style there. You know, very more pointed, more designed probably to get in the water a little bit. I love the action of this jig, and I love the skirt. The skirt seems to be a little thicker. The way I view it is the juicy jig's just a kind of an all-around real good jig. This is more of a heavy-duty jig. The hook's bigger, a little bit bigger size. This is still a half-ounce jig. Like I said, I throw a half-ounce almost all the time. And this is also, as you can see, an Okeechobee Craw. So that's one of my favorite colors. I just like the hint of blue. I think it's good. Around here where I live, in this pond that we're gonna be fishing in, that you guys have seen some videos come out of now, that pond has some blue craw in it. Just got, the craw has a little hint of blue. One other color real quick I want to show you. You guys are going to see that trend here that they're all dark. This right here, this is also one of the Fin Commander jigs, black and purple. Black is a great color for a jig. I have a couple all black jigs, but I love just a hint of color. I really like this color. I've been throwing it a little bit this year, probably slowly becoming one of my favorites. But like you guys can see, very dark colors. That box has a lot of dark colors in it. Even that PB&J is a darker color of jig. And like I said, we're gonna talk about that later. Real quick before we hit the water, now we're gonna talk about trailers. I talked about colors of trailers, you know, not worrying about colors, you know, just match the forage. Like here's what I do. Like I said, a lot of times, sometimes I'll match the jigs. If I find one I really like a color that I like to keep them matched. But most of the time I'm throwing like a green pumpkin jig, I'm just gonna put whatever craw trailers on there to match the forage. Like I said, that Okeechobee Craw with that blue, like throwing that a lot around here because we've got some blue craw. The craw's got blue in it. So, you know, don't get too caught up in the colors. And it's okay to have several different styles of trailers. I'm gonna show you guys my top two that I've got here. I don't get super fancy with it. I'll show you kind of what I do if I go finesse jig. But, you know, normally you see on the back a craw type bait. And that's what I normally throw. Very rarely do I throw anything other than a craw type bait. I've narrowed it down to bait styles I like specifically. And most of the brands out there, soft plastics, make baits that look like this. So real quick, we'll pick up that Thicc jig again. And the bait on here, and I'm gonna pull one out of the package so you guys can see it specifically. I'll Texas rig this bait too, but that is a Googan Baits Krackin Craw. That's also Okeechobee Craw. That is the full size. You hear in a minute, you're gonna see me show a smaller size. Googan does make a junior version of this bait. It's a smaller version, but I like on that Thicc jig, that bigger jig, to go big. The stereotype here a lot with jigs, less bites, better quality. Now, I'm not saying that means that if you pick up a jig today, you're only gonna catch 2 pounders or bigger. I've caught some little 10 inchers that I don't even know how they got the jig in their mouth. But typically, especially in summer, I'm targeting those big fish. My jig normally is my big fish bait. In that video you guys watched, you saw my other favorite baits. I throw a crankbait a lot. I throw a chatterbait a lot. I throw a lot of moving baits. I pitch a lot. So that when I pick up that jig, that is like my big fish bait. I'm looking for a big bite. And that's why I like throwing the full-size Krackin Craw on there. I'm gonna show you guys what a Krackin Craw looks like without the skirt in the way. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of this bait or used it before. This isn't the same color, but that's a Krackin Craw right there. Just, you know, very good action, lots of crazy action. Those legs really get to moving, which is what I like for a jig. And you'll see why when I fish it. I do a lot of like quick pops to get as much movement out of it as possible. I will throw the junior size occasionally. I'll throw the junior size on finesse jigs. I do some finesse jigging You guys that have watched my channel for a while know that I really like to finesse fish. But that's like these jigs, that's what I'm doing, especially in the summertime. I'm looking big fish. I'm looking the biggest bite I can get. Now real quick, I'm gonna go pick up this rod that has the Fin Commander jig on it, and it's got a different trailer on it. I'm gonna show you guys. And it's the Googan Baits Bandito bug. You guys have heard me talk about it. It's my go-to flipping bait when I'm just Texas rigged. Let me grab that rod real quick. This jig right here, this is the Fin Commander in the green pumpkin, half ounce, or this, I think it's 7/16 technically. That is the Bandito bug. That's a junior Bandito bug though. I like throwing the junior Bandito bug on the jigs. The Bandito bug has a stiffer action. The legs still kick and stuff, but the Krackin Craw is the one that's got all the crazy action. So I feel like sometimes when I put the Bandito bug, and I'll put a full-size Bandito bug on a jig sometimes to get like a big bite, but I feel like it doesn't have as the action, it's more of a stiffer action. So maybe if you've got some finickier fish, or fish that are just really having a tough bite and you want less action and more natural, or just not as much crazy action, that's the go-to. But I really love the junior size because it kind of shrinks the profile of that bait. That's more of my just kind of always in my hand option. Like I'll do that with the Thicc jig too. I'll put a junior Bandito bug on the back of it, a little smaller profile, not like targeting like big fish. But like I said, Thicc jig, big trailers, my big fish bait. So the two rods I like to throw them on. My favorite two rods, my setups. This right here, this is the Favorite Defender series. This is a 7/6 medium heavy. I love throwing this on 15-pound P-line. As with most flipping and pitching setups, I got a high-speed reel on here. This is an 8.1-to-1 reel, just to get those fish out of the grass, be able to get the bait back in my hand quick when I'm in between pitches. But I love this rod. It's been a great kind of big jig top water rod. You guys have heard me talk a lot about Favorite Rods on my Instagram channel. I absolutely love their product. This is a great rod. One of my go-tos. Now the other rod that's also my go-to pitching jig rod right now has just a Texas rig on it, but I'll show you guys that rod. This right here, this is a rod that I bought just to try out that has become probably a staple, and you guys will see a lot more of these rods get ordered. This is the 7/6 Balance from Favorite. A great pitching rod, a little more stiffer than this is a medium fast action. The Defender's a fast action. So medium fast action, a little more stiffer, a little more backbone. I love this rod. You know, I pitch and flip a lot, like I said. This is a Bandito bug on here. I pitch a lot of jigs. And this is actually 15-pound CX. I like both options. Really thick stuff with the big jig. Obviously, we've got the CXX, a little stronger, but this is just the general purpose CX, 15-pound. Both rods are 15 pounds. That balance rod, guys, I'll have to do a video on it separately, but it is so balanced and it's so comfortable. I know get tired flipping and pitching all day. That's really important to me, but those are kind of my setups. Those are my colors. If you guys have any questions or any of that, please leave a comment below. I'd love to answer it. Like I said, I'm a jig fishing connoisseur. A lot of the things I do, you guys will see on the water, are very simple things. Nothing too crazy. But I absolutely love fishing with a jig. It's one of my favorite ways to do it. I've been doing it a long time. I've bought a lot of jigs over the years. And these are just some of the things that I've really learned just really helped. You know, simplifying your colors, simplifying your trailers. Don't make it too complicated on yourself. Jig fishing isn't complicated. So now we're gonna pack our stuff up. We're gonna head to the water. I'm gonna show you guys some tips and tricks of things I do while fishing them live. Maybe we could catch a fish on camera too in this video. That'd be kind of cool. But just stick with us. We're gonna head to the lake and we'll keep going with this video. All right, so here we are working on jigs here. All right, so we're gonna pick up, I'm just gonna throw this general all-purpose jig from Fin Commander, okay? Now, we're gonna target cover, but in a pond like this, that's the great thing about a jig. You know, some people think it's just a cover bait. Wrong. Really, anywhere shallow, this whole stretch right here, great place for a jig. And as you guys can see, I'm kind of popping it one or two times. This is my favorite summer cadence. Just some real hard pops. And the reason I like that, it really pops that jig up, pops it up. Lets those legs do their thing. Trigger some bites. I'll add in some hops. Sometimes I'll shake it. That'll get the legs moving as well. Like just give it like a twitching quiver motion underwater. And here's the great thing about a jig. I've said this before, if I could pick only one bait ever to throw again, it'd be a jig. And the reason for it is how versatile it is. I could swim this back. A lot of times with that Krackin Craw, swim a juicy or a Thicc jig back. And fish it in grass, rock. It is the most versatile bait on planet Earth. in my opinion. And the great thing too is you got finesse jigs, you got big pitching jigs, football jigs. But see, I'm just, and like I said, not in a rush. I'm just gonna pitch it around cover where I know these fish are hanging out. Like I said, you know, these summertime bass, it's hot, you know, they're lazy. They're hanging out. They're not gonna be real active in the middle of the day. And we're kind of nearing the evening. It's been overcast, so today's a little different. It's been raining as well. But I'm just gonna real patiently just flip. And that's the thing about fishing this way. You know, you're, like I said earlier, your number of bites are gonna go down, but your quality should go up. You should start seeing a little better quality fish. Our jig is like a big fish presentation. Like I said, I got the juicy jig, which is a bigger presentation. But I've also got this just kind of all around. And see, and this is my summer cadence. Like I said, in the spring you'll see me do more kind of short hops, let it sit a little bit more. But you know, in the summer when it's hot and I know these fish aren't very active, I am looking to target and to get a response out of those big fish. I'm trying to trigger. So here's the great thing about a jig, like I said, so versatile. There's some rock in here. There's all this grass. These fish like to be in this pond. This is my pond on my property. These fish love this stuff. They love this little stretch. I caught a lot of fish on this stretch this spring and this year. So we're not gonna rush it. We're gonna fish all of it. The great thing about the jig is we can fish, you know, all of it effectively. The other reason why I love fishing a jig is efficiency. And what I mean by that, by efficiency, is when you fish a jig, you can know, you know, as I'm sitting here pitching and flipping going along, I can fish as slow or as fast as I want to, but this is a great bait to efficiently rule out, you know, and there may be fish there, but you know, they're not gonna bite. I can fish all around all this stuff, this whole shoreline. I can go up and down multiple times. And like I said, some days, especially in the summer, it's slow fishing anyway in the summer. You know, I mean, it's not gonna be, I mean, you have days like it, but it's not like in the spring where you may be on a flurry. You know, you'll find some schools and stuff, but special middle of the day, tournament days, middle of the, see, there's one right there. Ooh, had one. Stole a pincher. Let's see if we get it. So, anyways, what I'm saying is, you know, middle of the day, hot summer, you know, these fish aren't as active as they were, you know, and you're gonna have some really big, smart fish down there that are, you know, gonna be patient. So you've got to be patient too, and that's what I love about a jig. You can be super patient, really eliminate water, fish it real effectively. You know, see, like I said, I'm hopping it real hard, trying to trigger that fish. Like I said, it's like the perfect bait for those summer days. Oh, there's a thump. There we go. There we go. Oh, that's a nice one. Stay on, baby. Stay on. Good fish. Oh, that really good fish. Boom, there you go, guys. I did my Ned rig how to and never caught a fish. But right there. And see, and as you guys can tell, we pitched in there several times. That was our third or fourth pitch. That's a beautiful fish. That's a nice fish. We'll measure him here real quick. He's about 15 and a half. We'll weigh him too. I'm gonna guess like right at 2.6. I saw another fish on these rocks. That's a pretty fish, guys. Nice bite. Put her back. But guys, see, that's what I'm talking about with this jig. That is perfect timing too. I mean, we had pitched in here already. We missed a fish. Could have been her, could have been a different one. But you know, if we just pitched in here and, you know, ran, I mean, we could have missed her. And you know, that's what I love. That's how I fish a jig. You know, the way I always view when I'm fishing a jig, you know, I'm gonna be efficient. I'm gonna really pick apart the area that I'm fishing in. That's what we're talking about, guys, right there. You know, we were able to cover this water, and even with one pincher, I mean, just real hard pops. You know, I'm trying to trigger that reaction strike, and there's another one. I think she let go. could have been a log too. But you see, like, there's rock and stuff down there. Like, I know that. You guys don't know that, you can't see it, but I know there's rocks down there. I know that those fish are probably still on those rocks. And you see, like, now I'm kind of switching up my cadence a little bit, but when we pitched in there 3 or 4 times and we were able to get that fish to bite, we were able to coax her to come up and eat, you know? So, you know, that is the thing about a jig that I absolutely love. You know, we're going along, we're gonna flip all this stuff. You see all this, there's a log down right here. We're gonna flip that. I mean, it's just the perfect presentation and the perfect bait, you know, for really effectively picking apart all this stuff. And it's one reason why it'd be the bait that if I could only pick one bait to ever fish with, that's why I'd pick a jig. I mean, so versatile. You can fish it every water column, you swim it, bounce it. It's a great spawning bait. But in this summertime, like we're in right now, hot, these fish are getting lazy. That's why you want to have a jig in your hands. And the other tip that I want to give real quick, you know, be looking where you want your next pitch to go. You know, we're fishing slow, but we still want to be efficient. We don't want to be sitting out here wasting time, especially in a tournament setting. So as you're sitting here flipping, like when I was flipping over there, I'm looking over here. I'm looking at my next target. And when you find that target, just so you can be more efficient, you know, we're maybe slow and you may come back, or like I casted, so now I'm gonna cast a little shorter, but I'm gonna be efficiently going after these different spots. Keep it simple with the colors, the trailers. And jig fishing really isn't all that hard that some people think it is at times. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm looking down here, but guys, thank you for watching. If you guys have any questions, please leave a comment below. I'd be happy to answer. This jig that I caught this fish on, this is the Fin Commander jig. I'm gonna link it below. That was a little Bandito bug, the junior Bandito bug on the back. And then I had the Thicc jig that I didn't pick up during the on-water tutorial. But guys, as you can see, I mean, that was live time. We'd only been out here about 5 minutes and we got a fish to bite. So great technique for the summer. I mean, I would, if I was in a tournament and I always pretend this is a little pocket, I'd keep going. I'd just keep flipping this thing, and I'm gonna keep flipping it. And it's always on for me every time of year, but especially in the summer, great bait. But guys, thanks for tuning in. If you want to see more how-to videos like this, the only way we know is for you to like it and comment how much you enjoyed it below. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.